Welcome to the Java guide. For today, we are going to be taking a look at arrays. So we are going to be looking at how to work on arrays, how to manipulate arrays, how to iterate through arrays, as well as some common array methods. To get started, I've created a class. I've created a Java class for this particular lesson. So the first step would be to create a main method where my examples are going to be. The first question you might want to ask is why the need for arrays. Okay, suppose I want to declare something like this, like the different months in a year, right? So I could have string month one, okay, and I will call this what January, okay. Then I will go string month two, I will call this February. Okay. Then go to the next one again, month three. So this would give us this would be March. So and so on like that. I would have to create 12 different variables for that. So imagine another scenario where I need to actually store arrange number of students in the class. Okay, do I need to create hundreds of variables? Do I need to create 20 variables just to contain 20 students? So Java provides, or most programming languages provide arrays to handle stuffs like this. So when it comes to array in Java, so one thing to take note of is that an array is basically a linear collection of elements of the same type. Okay, meaning they are all every element in the array have to be of the same type. So to create an array, for example, in Java, is a bit similar to variables. So the first thing is the data type. Okay, so if I'm creating a string array, so then write this square brackets, then the variable name. Okay, so I could have names of footballers, for example. Okay, so in here I could have, so yeah, so with this I have actually created the array without initializing it. Okay, I could also have an integer array, something like this. Okay, I could have ages of what students. Okay, so I could also have a double array, let's say weight of students. Okay, so basically this is just how you this is the syntax for creating an array. So the first step is the data type, whether string, int, double, and so on. And then these square brackets, which are very important. This is what separates uh, the array from ordinary variables. So this is basically the syntax for creating an array. Okay. So now after creating the array, okay, you might want to initialize the array. Okay, so ideally in Java, okay, so in initializing arrays, it's important to note that the size of the array has to be declared. Okay, the size of the array has to be specified. Okay, so to do that, the syntax for this is so I could, let's say I create another integer array. Okay, uh, let's say roll number. Okay, so here I will just say new int, and then I will have the number of elements here. So what this basically means is that I have an array called roll number. It's an integer array, and then it has 5 elements in it. Okay, so so I could also have something like this string. Okay, then I could also have names of students. Okay, So in this case, I'm declaring the variable first, and then I will just come here and then I will just come here to initialize that something new. Don't forget that the type is going to be string, and then I could have 10 here. So basically, you can see that here I'm initializing the array in just one statement. So in this one, I'm actually breaking it down into two. So at first, I'm declaring the array here, and then here I'm actually initializing the array. So basically, this is how you initialize the array. Don't forget that in initializing the array, you are just specifying how many elements should be in that array. Now, so another important thing to take note here is that in Java, okay, arrays are zero index based. Okay, so when we talk about index, so index basically is like so it's basically like the address for each element in the array. So consider that we have a train. So in this train, we have several compartments in this train. Okay, so each compartment would contain probably different sets of people. It would contain different. It could contain different items and so on like that. So let's say, for example, we have a train of just five compartments, right? So then the each of those compartments would have an address that identifies each of them. So you could have the first one, which will be the first index. Then you have the second one, which will be the second index, the third one, the fourth, and then the fifth one. Okay, so basically the index here is just the address. So when I say compartment one, so it is most likely where you would have the driver of the train. Okay, so when you have compartment two, so then you could also have some people inside that compartment as well. So let's say, so basically that's what arrays are. Okay, so here I'm going to create an array literal. So here I'm going to create an array and I'm going to add some elements into them. So for example, let me remove this. I would want to use those same variables in this instance here. So here I could have string, okay, names of footballers, okay. So here I would just have, this is the syntax for adding the elements in the array. So let's say here, for example, I could have something like Messi, okay. I could have something like Ronaldo. I could have Maradona. I could have Pele, okay. So okay, this guy is out of the array declaration. Okay, so good. This is basically um, so this is basically an array now with four different items. Okay, so meaning that this array is it has four items, or you could say it's like a train with four compartments, right? So in a train, for example, what this would imply is that in the first compartment you have Lionel Messi, in the second compartment you have Ronaldo, in the third you have Maradona, and in the fourth one and the last one, which is where you have Pele, right? So if you look at this, so basically it's just similar in arrays, only that here we start our index from zero. So Messi here is the guy in this occupying the zeroth index. Okay, Ronaldo is occupying index one, Maradona is occupying index two, and Pele is occupying what? Index three. So take note that the length of an array of this array is four, right? The highest index of that array is going to be what? Three. So meaning that the highest index, okay, the highest index in an array is the length of the array minus one. Basically, and that's just because the first element in that array starts from zero. Okay, so by default, the last guy there is going to be the length of the array minus one. So in this case, the length of our array here is four, right? So the index of the last element here is going to be what? the length of array, which is 4, then minus 1, this is 3. So this becomes 0 index, the first index, the second index, and then the third index. Okay, so here, if for example now I want to actually check the elements in the first index, right? So how do I do that? So you just call that array names, then here you just add the index. So index 0 will give us Messi. So if I do names of footballers, the index 1 will give us this. I could also do names of footballers, index 2. Sorry, this should be 2. Okay, names of footballers, index 3. Okay, so with this, I can then print out the names of the content of each index in the array. So if I let me run this now. Okay, so exactly that's what we have. In the zeroth index, we have Messi. In the first index, we have Ronaldo. The second index, we have Maradona, and then in the third index, which is the last guy, we have Pele. Okay, so you see here how you can actually populate the contents of the array initially when you are actually declaring it. So here, another thing is you could also check for the length of that array as well. Names of footballers dot length. Okay, the name of the array, then you apply the dot length, this dot length guy. So when I run this guy now, it should tell me the length of that array. So that's it. Okay, so now let's look at something like this. Okay, we could also have something like integer array, right? Okay, days in months. Okay, so in this case, I want to have the different days in a month. So here I could start by initializing the array to 12, right? Okay, so this should be new int. Okay, so since there are 12 months in a year, so I'm initializing this guy towards 12. Now, I could how so you could see in this way how I populated this array directly in one statement. So I could actually populate my array one after the other instead of populating them at once inside this particular, it's just a single line. Okay, so though it may take some time, they are not so effective, but then I want you to know that this is quite possible as well. So what I'll just do is days in months, index 0. So I'll just set it to be what? 31. That's January, right? So January has 31 days. Okay, so if I run days in months, index 1, I'll just set it to what? That's February. I think that's sometimes 29 or 28, so I'll put 29. Okay, I could have days in months for index 2, which is March. That's also 31 days. Okay, I could have one more days in months, index 3, which is April. I could set this to 30 days. So basically, you see how you can actually also populate the content of your array step by step. Okay, so I would like to run this as well. How to print out. So let's say I try to print out days in months, then the element in the fourth index, which I haven't specified here. So I want to see what I'm actually going to get. Okay, so you can see that I get 0 because it's an integer, right? So it follows here that when an array is created like this, initialized like this to a particular length, okay, all the elements in that array are set to 0 until you actually specify the the value in that particular array. So if, for example, this were a string array now, it would initialize each element in that array to an empty string until you actually set the values for them. So apart from that, even when you set the value of a particular index, you could also change it. Okay, so I could come here and say this. Okay, before doing that, let me print out days in months, index 0. So at this point, the number of days in the first month of the year is 31, right? Which we have set here. So what if I decide to change that? Okay, I want to change that here. So I'll just say equals, let's say 40. Of course, there are no months with 40 days, but just for a test. So if at this point I now run this in months of index 0. So if I run this now, let's see what happens. Okay, so you see that when I actually run this statement here, okay, it gave me 31 days, right? Okay, then I now change this value. So it means that, and then when I actually run this code, so it's giving me 40 days now. So it means you can actually change the content of your array as you might wish to. So yeah, basically this is just how you could perform the creation, the initialization, and then so just filling up the content of the array. So yeah, so basically this is just after getting the first step out of the way. Okay, so I think the next step here is okay, printing out an array. Printing out an array. Okay, so previously we've seen that as with variables, you could just do something like this. Okay, then you just pass in the age here and then you're able to print it out directly. So let me run this. Okay, so it prints out the age. So how about in the case of arrays? Okay, so let me try to print this out by just calling this variable, for example. So I would just come over here and then call days in months. So let's try to run it and see what we are going to get. So you can look at this here. So it gives us this strange looking set of characters. So it means that if we are going to actually access the elements in an array, this is not the way to do that. So basically, there are two ways to actually access all the elements in an array. Okay, so the first way is to use a for loop. Okay, the first way is to use a for loop. So the for loop there, it just iterates through all the elements in the array and then it prints each one. So let's try to do that. So for, okay, I'm going to set up a counter. Okay, so the counter is just going to count all the elements in the array, right? So we are going to start from where? Index 0, because the first element in the array always has the index of 0. So I would have 0 here. Okay, so and then this is the starting point of the iteration. So the next statement is where I want that particular so I want it, where I want the counting to stop. So in this case, I want it to stop at um, when the counter is less than the length of the array. Okay, so don't forget that the last element in that array is always going to be one less than the actual length of the array. So if you have 10 elements in your array, the last index is going to be what? 9. So it means you want to actually iterate from index 0 to what? Index 9. Okay, so then I want to actually step through in counts of 1. So plot plot. I'm stepping through that array in counts of 1. So so what I'm going to do here is I'll just print out uh, the days in months, then I'll pass in the counter at the index. So if you look at this here, while trying to print, I'm passing out a digit, 4, 0, and so on as the index, as the element index of the element I want to print. So here we are setting this counter as the index of the particular element. So let's analyze this critically. So we are actually going to start from index equals what? Where the counter is 0, right? So the first time this statement is going to execute, it's going to execute the days in months where the index is what? 0. And the element in the 0th index, if we check it here, based on what we've done here, is going to be what? 40. Okay, then it would continue in steps of what? 1. So it will increment itself by 1. So you have 0 plus 1. So the counter becomes 1. So at the point where counter is 1, I'm trying to print out the elements in the ones or the first index of these days in months. So the element in the first index is what? Exactly this. So let's try to run this at this point. Um, okay, so let me just do this. Just as an header, iterating through the array so that you don't have a mix up in the way these guys are running. So let me run this and see what we get. Okay, so you can see now. So from this point, it starts printing out the elements in that array. The first one is 40. The second one is 29. The next one is 31. The next one is 30. So don't forget that we only set up to index 3. So and this is all the other ones we didn't set. You see that it sets them by default to 0. So if, for example, I just come here and then pass in index, let's say 8. Let me set this to be 31. I think that's July. If I run this now again, so you see that along the line we would have one element that's no longer 0. So you can see that this point is what? 31. So basically, if you need to run through the elements in an array, you can use this for loop. Okay. So you can also use another for loop. So you could just type in for, then the type of element in that array. So you have int element, okay, and this, sorry, okay, then this inside the particular array we are trying to do is this. Okay, what this statement means is that you are trying to go through each element. Okay, this is just a variable name. You can put anything here. You can put any variable name that as you so wish. So I'm just using element. So I'm saying for each element inside this particular array. Okay, so I want you to actually print what element. So if I run this, okay, let me put an header here. Sorry, let me put another header here. So I want to say using alternative for loop. Okay, so that we don't have a mix up between everything we are doing. So if I run this now, okay, so you see here that from this point again, it actually runs as well. Okay, so this is basically, I would say this is still just one method, only that you are just changing the style or the flavor of the for loop you are using. So another way to actually just print out the content of an array without having to loop through is to actually do this. So you use these arrays, okay? Arrays from java.util, arrays dot, okay, dot to string. Then you pass in the particular array you are trying to print, okay? You could also do the same for which other array have I clarified? Okay, I've also have names of footballers, right? So let's say, okay, so let me run this first. Okay, let me do this. I'll call it using arrays dot to string method. So if I run this now, okay, so you see that it actually prints out the array in this specific format. So yeah, so just as a way of improving muscle memory, so how about we try to iterate through this particular area as well, which is names of footballers, right? Okay, so to do that, we are going to use the for loop first. So for means counter, starting from what? 0. Okay, counter less than names of footballers. Okay, dot length. Then you step through by levels of 1. So here I will just print out names of footballers at the index of counter. Okay, like I've explained before, initially the count level of counter is what, 0. So what it means is that you are first going to print the value, the element at the index 0 of names of footballers. So let's try this. Uh, so if I run this, okay, don't let me print it on different lines. So just print. So let me run this and see what I get. Okay, so it actually prints them out. So to make it clear, I will just concatenate a space between them. So I think it should come out fine and now good. So we have that particular array coming out here. So another way to actually do this, okay, the type of the element, so it is string footballer, which is also a variable name in uh, names of what footballers. Okay, so you could just do this. Let me use this again. I'll just print what footballer. So basically, I'm saying print each footballer that exists in this particular array. So basically, you can see that syntax here, similar to this, just that the type is what differentiates between them. So if I run this now, okay. So let me print a new line here. Then here, let me concatenate the space. Okay. So if I run this now, it should come out just fine. Okay, so then the last method, which is the arrays dot to strings method. So I'll just do arrays dot to string, and then I'm going to pass in the particular array, which is what names of footballers. So I'm just going to run this, and then yeah, good. So we see that it comes out quite fine here. Okay, so that's about how to access or how to actually print out the elements in an array. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I would like us to take note of this, okay, which is called index out of bounds error. Okay, this is an error that actually you might see when you are trying to print out or access an element in an array which is actually not available. So if you look at the names of footballers here, okay, it's the length of this particular array is just 4. So what if I'm trying to, it means that it runs from index 0 to 3. So what if I'm trying to access an element on index 4, which is basically out of the range of that particular element. So names of footballers, let's say 5, which doesn't exist. So let's run this and see what we get. Okay, exactly. So you get this exception. It says index 5 out of bounds for what? For length 4. So that it tells you the line of code where you have the error. So this is basically bad code. So you need to basically watch out for that. So when your index is whatever the length of your index of your array is, the last index of that array is going to be the length of that array minus 1. So you always have to watch this. So the last index this guy can print out without any error is 3. Okay, so if I print this again, so it should just print out the, you can see that, which is the element that has the last index in the array. Yeah, okay. So so one more thing I would just like us to take note of is that so you can also pass in an array as a method parameter. Okay, so previously we have seen several examples. I think if I go in here, so you can see here that we are passing in a variable uh, as uh, as a method parameter, right? So in here as well, instead of variable, you could also have a parameter. You could also have an array as a parameter. So let's say, for example, I want to create a method, okay, that prints out uh, numbers from, let's say, print out. even numbers from 1 till 10 in an array that stores, okay, that it stores even numbers from 1 to 10 in an array. Okay, so I could have something like this. I'll create to create the method public static, let's say void store even numbers. Okay, so I want this to take an array of okay, so let's just say so basically any array. So you could just call this my array. It's just a variable name. Okay, so instead of this kind of example, I've thought of something else. So you just want to create a method that prints uh, all elements in an array. Okay, so here, don't forget, you can just use any of the methods we've specified. So basically, the user is passing in an array, right? So so let's just change this to display elements in array. Okay, so basically what I just doing here is we need a for loop, right? If you are going to print out element in the array, so you could then have its counter starting from the zeroth index of that array, right? Then counter less than my array dot length, whatever the length of that array is. I want the counter to iterate up to the last element in it. Then you just step through the count of what? One. So this will be count dot what? So I could just do this. Okay, so I could just print out my array is whatever the array is that is being passed in there. So I'll just pass in the counter. So how do I then access this method? So I'll just call this method from inside my main method, which is up here. Okay, so which is here. So I'll then just down here, I'll say I need to write this out. Okay, I'll just display this. Okay, so I want to so you could basically just pass in any array or pass in any array here. So let me try. So roll number. I've created an array up here which is called the roll number, right? So I want to pass in that particular array. So let's say uh, down here I'll just fill in some elements in that roll number array. So I could just say 1, 2, 3. Let me see. Okay, so I'll just add new ints. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so inside this method now, just pass in this roll number. If I run this now, so I should have this as my result. It should just print out. So you see that it prints it out, right? So with this method now, I can actually pass in any array as an argument to this particular method, and then it will print out all the elements in that particular array. So you can see basically here how you can pass in an array as a method parameter. So apart from that is that you can also return an array. Okay, just like you can have a string, an int, a boolean as a return type. You could also have an integer as a return type. Okay. So let's have this. Let's say we do. Let's create another method here. Okay. Public static int. Okay. Display even numbers between 1 and 10. Okay. So basically, I'm creating a method here that will return an integer that contains even numbers between 1 and 10. So okay, so in this case, what I'm just going to do is so let me just initial create an array first. Okay, result array. Okay, so here I'll just have a for loop. Okay, so in this case, int counter. So based on what you are trying to do, displaying even numbers between 1 and 10, right? So the counter is going to start from 1. Okay, counter less than or equal to 10. So it means when it gets to the point 10, you want it to stop. Uh, okay, so let's say counter plus plus. Okay, so what you are just going to do here is, so I'll say the if counter modulo 2 equals 0, right? So don't forget that even numbers, they are basically those numbers that when you divide it by 2, you have no remainder. So your remainder is 0, right? So I could just do this. So so if the counter, the remainder when you divide by 2 is 0, so I would just do, okay, um, so I'll just do result array. Okay, instead of even numbers, let me just print out numbers between 1 and 10. Okay, so here I don't need this complex logic. So let's just keep it quite simple. So you are looking at displaying numbers between 1 and 10, right? So I will just come out here and then result array counter is equal to that's okay. So this I could just do, okay, yeah. It will be equal to counter. So okay, so yeah, let's see how, so we need to specify the length of this particular array. So let's say I want 10. Okay, so yeah, I'll just return the result array. Okay, so I would call this method again from inside this main method. So I'll just say display between 1 and 10, right? So I would need to print that print statement. So yeah, okay. Okay, so because I'm trying to print the array, I need to actually wrap it with this arrays dot to string method. So if I run this now, let's see what we get. Okay, we have out of bounds. So okay. So I think let's change this to 9. So because of this plus plus, I think that's where the issue is coming from. So I'll change this to 9 such that when it gets to the point 9, it will just add 1 and then we have 10. So I think then we'll be fine. So yes, basically you are able to print out those numbers. Okay. So I think we are good for now. I think we are good regarding this. So yeah, so basically you can return an array, okay? Just like you can also have an array as a parameter type. Okay. So here there are actually some methods we can there are some things you can actually there are some stuff you can actually do with array. So let's look at some methods to manipulate arrays. Okay, methods to manipulate arrays. Okay, so so let's start with system.out. dot copy. Okay, system dot array copy. Okay, okay. So this system dot array copy is quite useful in copying elements of a particular array into another array. So let's say we have this array here. Okay, so I call it months. Okay, and let me just take the pain of filling in every single month here. Okay, raised out June, okay, August, September, we have October, November, and then December. Okay, so basically we have all the 12 months here, right? Okay, suppose I want another array that actually shows probably only the rainy months, probably the months where you have high volume of rainfall. So I could just have another guy here. Okay, I could call this months. Or, let me call it rainy months. Okay, so basically I just want to pick any. I want to pick like 5 months. Okay, so 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 we are going to make use of this system.array copy. So to do that, system.array copy. Okay, so the first thing you need to pass in is the source array, meaning the array where you want to actually copy items from. So in this case, I think I'm copying from months. Okay, so let's say and then the source position. So let's say I want to copy from the point 4. Okay, then the next thing I would want to specify is the destination array, the array where I'm going to be inserting the copied items from. So I'll just call it rainy months. Okay, and I want to fill them up from point 0. Okay, so it seems there's an error here. Okay, so we say then the length of that array, which is how long do I want the array to be. So I'll just call it rainy months dot length. I think we are good. So let's take a deeper look at this method. So I want to copy at least 5 months from this guy here. Okay, 5 months that I consider to be rainy months. I want to copy them from here and then put them into a new array. Okay, so this system.array copy, it provides me this method here provides me it mandates me to actually put in the following parameters. So I need the source array, right, which is months. Okay, then the position of the array where I want to start copying from. I want to start copying from index 4, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to start copying from here, right? Then where do I want to copy it to? I want to copy it into rainy months. Okay. Then uh, the from which position in that particular array do I want to start copying from? I want to start copying from from 0. Okay, you can set this to anything. You can set it to point 10. Just so it now say then ask me for the length, like how many elements do I want to copy. So basically, I'm saying let the length be equal to the length of this particular array. So now, let me now, after this, I will just want to print out my rainy months. Don't forget, I will use my arrays dot to string and then pass in the months, rainy months. Okay, so let me try running this and see what we get. Okay, so you can see here that it actually copies some elements in this particular array from it. So it copies from May and then stops at what? September. So if you look at it, that's exactly 5 months. So this is one way by which you can copy elements in an array. So as an assignment or like just as a work, okay. So I want you to create an array of 20 numbers. Okay, then copy the even numbers. Let me say any 20 numbers. So copy the even numbers in the source array into a destination array. So I'd like you to do this just to practice what we have done here. So to move on, okay. So there's also a method to actually sort the elements in your array. So let's say I do okay, I want to sort this array here called months. Okay, so there's this method arrays.sort. Okay, then you just pass in the particular array. Oh, sorry, let me remove this. There's an error here. So, so basically, let me do this arrays.sort months. Okay, so what this will do is that it will sort this particular array. It will actually make a change in that array. So in this case, I can now print out that month array. So arrays dot to string, then pass in months. So if I run this now, okay, so you see that it actually prints it out in ascending order, right? So let's try to do this and see. I want to print out the zeroth element in that array now, just so you see that it actually makes a change in that array. So you see now that the zeroth element now is what? April, even though when we created it, the zeroth element was January. So when you run this, when you use this arrays.sort method, it actually makes a change in that particular array. So so yes, we have been able to actually find out the index of we've been able to find out the elements in a particular index. Okay, don't forget, yeah, we've been able to find out elements in an index. So, for example, you check, it's like finding out the occupants of a particular address. So, what if we want to actually check the index of an element? You don't even know whether it exists or not in there, but you just want to check for such an element, right? So, let's check if an index, okay, if an element, or check the index of any element. So basically this checks if that element exists or not. If it exists, then it responds with the index of that particular element. So to do this here, we will do arrays dot uh, binary search. Okay, so what is that what is that array I'm trying to check? So I'll just call months. Okay, so I'll now check what is it that I want to check. I want to check if uh, January. Okay, so it spells it this way, January. Okay, good. So so I would want to put this in the system out statement. So let's run this now and see. Okay, so it tells me that January is in index 4. So if you look from here, this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So basically, it checks that it exists. So let's try to even check for something that doesn't exist. So arrays.binary search, type that same month. So I want to check if there is Java. Okay. Yes. So let's run it now and see what it does. Okay. So it says -6. So it basically gives us a negative value just to let you know that this guy doesn't exist. Okay. So you could try this with let's say C sharp. Let's run it again and see what we get. Okay, -13. So it gives you a negative number. So whenever you call this method, then you get a negative number. So you will understand that the element doesn't exist. So that's a binary search. Okay, let me see which other method we can try to work on again. Okay, we've seen binary search, we've seen sort. Um, okay, okay. These are just a lot of so probably in some we'll be solving. So after this, we are going to be solving some inter or coding questions that involves both strings as well as arrays. So so from there we'll be able to make you would see more use cases of some of these methods and techniques that we have learned so far. And then it would also probably spur you to want to make some more research about some other methods um, that can be of good use. So so that will be all for this particular lesson, and hopefully we would see very soon where we actually start solving some coding challenges. So all right, till we see again.